What was the most effective personal time management technique that you used on this project? Why was it effective?
The most effective time management technique that I used was specifically trying to manage everything in a calendar and making sure that I was committing consistently. Going back and forth between every other day to working several days in a row made it a little more difficult in trying to remember when exactly I last committed. And so setting it in my calendar and setting a time apart just to code or just to do research or just to do anything like that made it better, made me stay on time and make sure that I was committing as just as much as the rest of my teammates were.
Based on your work on this project, how has your view of software engineering changed, and why?
It has changed in that I realize now how much more paperwork there is, and that goes along with it when you're working with projects. Particularly in this one, we were having a scholarly project, and we were trying to make sure that everything that we have is detailed, it is to the spec of the sponsor, making sure that when we are creating data and facts for our customer or our sponsor, we have to go back and forth. There has to be a constant communication. There has to be information or documents that go back and forth where we're constantly checking one another to see if we're both on the same page. That was something that I wasn't as experienced with. I think it's pretty important to understand that a lot of times people like to code alone, but when you're working on a larger project, you have to have that back and forth. You have to have that constant communication, and that was significantly different for me.
How is interacting with the sponsor on this project different than your other class projects?
My other class projects, there was a lot less interaction, in fact. And with this particular sponsor, initially we weren't relying on them as much in terms of facts and information. I think that we took, or I personally took, a lot of time trying to do my own research, which is great. I mean, you have to find out the things on your own and you have to understand, what is out there. But at the same time, with having a lot more factual data that you have to provide, you have to look for more scholarly documents, and there's things out there that you won't necessarily have access to. And once I started realizing that, and I spoke to the sponsor and the whole team, we were relying more and more on the sponsor in terms of what we needed, because they had it readily available. It was something quite as simple as asking them and they could send it to us, rather than us spending a significant amount of time trying to get out there and search for it and just trying to see what we could find, versus saying, this is what we're looking for, what can you help us with, and they have a plethora of information. It was a lot easier to deal with a sponsor in that way, rather than just that bare interaction where they just kind of give you a little bit of information and tell you, hey, go off in this direction, and you can't have that communication. So this was a lot better in terms of being able to go back and forth and continuous communication, and just making sure that we were all working together towards the same goal. It looks like somehow my question 2 has been skipped.